All right, home inspectors, I have a special guest here with me this morning. I don't know when you'll be listening to it, but I have Jerry Isenhour. Yes, you heard it right, Isenhour. And he is actually an eighth cousin or something. I'll let him explain that to President Eisenhower. But Jerry and I kind of hooked up. He's in my area, and he is a chimney expert and also a coach. And we have a lot of mutual friends, and it was just bound that we were going to run across each other. And I think we both have some useful information that I think will benefit you guys. So, Jerry, fill in the gaps there on that introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, hey Preston, good to be with you today. My name's Jerry Isenhour, and like I said, hey, you attracted my attention because you got some wild britches on. I saw you on my buddy Tim Davis's Facebook page a couple weeks ago. So anyway, connected up, saw your podcast. I've been observing home inspectors for years. I participate in some of the Facebook groups, and I saw you had a podcast. Like, hey, I'd love to share some information with you guys. So sent you a note. We're connected up. So hey, that's what it's all about this morning. We're here to share information with your audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So what the plan is, we're going to get into fireplaces and chimneys, and I think Jerry has some great information that will help home inspectors do a better job for their clients. And he is, man, in the pre-talk, I mean, I was just kind of like Charlie Brown talking to the teacher because he knows a lot. So I guess we'll start off with, and I guess we could divide it into different parts, wood, fireplace versus gas and that sort of thing. But Jerry, if we were a home inspector going to inspect let's just start off with a gas. That's what we see more than anything. Gas logs, some ventless, some ventless. What are some things we could look for?
Okay, first thing is there's three types of gas appliances that a home inspector is going to run into. They're going to be what we call a vented gas log, which has to be in a fireplace that is suitable and usable for wood burning. A lot of consumers will think that if they have a chimney problem that they can install a gas log and the gas log will be able to operate. But if you actually look at the manufacturer's installation instructions, gas logs are going to require a chimney suitable for wood burning. Now that's on a vented gas log. We also have what we call a vent-free gas log. Preston, you and I live in North and South Carolina. We live in North Carolina. And North and South Carolina are the capital for vent-free appliances in the country. There is more in this particular area than anywhere else in the country. And if you're in other parts of the country, you may not even see a vent-free gas log. Vent-free has certain requirements also. They've got to be installed, believe it or not, in a fireplace that is suitable for wood burning, or they've got to be installed in a factory-built fireplace that is listed for use with a vent-free gas log. Now, you're going to run into factory-built fireplaces, and many factory-built fireplaces are not listed for vent-free gas logs. Vent-free gas logs have certain requirements. They will not operate when there's less than 18% oxygen content in the room. There is also specialized controls on them. A vent-free gas log is going to have what's called an ODS. And ODS stands for oxygen depletion sensor. And this is a valve that's in the system that's monitoring the amount of oxygen coming in. If we drop below 18%, and this will happen from carpet fibers, pet hair, dust getting into the control system. The third type of gas appliance is the most popular you're going to find in your homes, and that is called a direct vent gas products. Direct vent gas means it is a sealed combustion chamber. It will have a solid piece of glass that you'll actually have to take off with a screwdriver. It may have doors that can open, but behind it, you will find a solid piece of glass. A direct vent does not use any room air for combustion air. The combustion air comes from the venting system. It's either a two-pipe system or it is a pipe inside a pipe. So on the direct vent, we are taking the combustion air from outside, we feed it to the appliance, goes through the combustion process, and then expelled back to the outdoors. Now, the reason you're seeing more and more direct vent is because today's homes are weatherized and we don't have enough combustion air, or what we call makeup air, in the home. And by that reason, the fireplaces don't perform. So in the last 30 years, we've seen a move towards gas logs, vented gas logs, vent-free gas logs, but now we're seeing the definite move in the fireplace of going to direct vent. Unless you are building an extremely high-end home today, you're probably not going to have a masonry fireplace. Masonry fireplace construction has dropped to less than 5% of the marketplace in America today, and factory built units are now composing about 95%. I actually do some classes in the fireplace industry on the entire history of the fireplace in America and those type of things. But that's what you're going to find out there. Remember, there's three types. It's going to be the vented, the vent-free or unvented, and the direct vent appliances, what you're going to run into.
Well, Jerry, all right, so there's three types. What would you say is the most common defect for each type?
The most common defect for each type. In a vented gas log, it's going to usually be a chimney that does not draw properly as one, or number two, it could be improper installation because a lot of people do not understand how to properly install them. So in the situation, if the fireplace doesn't draw properly, gas will emit soot, and vented gas logs create a tremendous amount of soot. The problem with gas soot is we don't see gas soot until a few days later. If you're doing a home inspection and they have gas logs, what you want to be looking for is what we call ghosting in the home. Ghosting would mean looking around an electrical outlet or other air entry points. When you look at it, you'll see this sprayed look sometime where it's like dirt.
Yeah.
If you look around electrical outlets, if you look around window seals, anywhere you have leakage points, knowing weatherization and understanding pressure, that's going to be a lot of it. But number one issue with a vented gas log is going to be we got a chimney that doesn't work right. On a vent-free gas log, the most common issue is going to be improper log placement. A vent-free gas log is made to work without what we call flame impingement. In other words, the flame should not hit the logs. Whenever the flame on a gas product hits the logs, it impinges a flame, it blocks it. When you block a gas flame, what happens then is you have carbon buildup, which is from the carbon monoxide. So if you see a vent-free gas log and there's any soot on the vent-free gas log whatsoever, you got a problem. One of the things is if a home inspector, if they wanted to get a little more into this, would be to have a CO meter with them. They can read the CO. And turning on the gas log, you can measure the CO inside the fireplace with a simple little CO meter. And a vent-free gas log is not allowed under the manufacturers, the codes, everything to produce more than 5 ppm of carbon per hour, and that is parts per million. Now, the other thing that happens on vent-free gas logs have the ODS on them. And an ODS is a small metering device that is pulling the air in from the room and going through it. It's going through a small pinhole. The pinhole is about the size of a ballpoint ink pen. And what happens is, since it's pulling the air from the home, the air in the home has got dust in it, it's got carpet fibers, it's got all these other type of things, so it will block up. So the ODS in the average gas log has got to be cleaned out usually annually, and sometimes more than that. A lot of times on a vent-free gas log, someone will go changing a thermocouple or a thermopile, which are safety devices, and what it is the ODS valve that's got to be cleaned out. And then on direct vent could be any type of venting issues, improper placement. On gas appliances, I recommend that you look for a technician who is certified under the National Fireplace Institute and a gas certification. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be great, and there's also people that are not certified under NFI that do a great job. But just like in home inspection, more certifications, more training, the better you're going to be. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yes. And I've always been told you can't be too smart or too good looking. So my only chance is to improve that first one for myself. So
hey, with them britches you wear, Preston, I'm going to tell you, brother.
Try to be remembered, man. Try to be remembered and embarrass my kids. That's what I'm not going after.
Let
me ask you. ask you this, Jerry. And you may have mentioned it there, the parts per million, and I'm glad you said that. I think you said 5 parts per million, more than that, because I got into a little bit of a argument or dispute or whatever, because we had one that was like 9 or 10, and I've got those carbon monoxide detectors, and for anybody who's never used one, I mean, you put it to the exhaust of a car, it's like 3,700. But to me, any amount is bad, but sometimes 1, 2, or 3 could be a calibration issue or something like that. So you're saying anything over 5 should be called out. And let me ask you this: is there some sort of device some of those systems have that will, if they pick up a certain amount of carbon monoxide, they will shut it off? And I'll hand it over to you on that.
There are no vent-free products that have a carbon monoxide detector to shut them down. Now, Preston, the 5 ppm, that is perfect conditions. If I had a unit that was emitting 10 ppm, would I be overly concerned? No, but I would be saying check it, because more than likely this could be done by something simple. A log can simply be a little bit out of place, but I want to identify that to see where you're at. If you take the average person who is a smoker, okay, and if they go outside at a class and they smoke a cigarette, if they come back inside 5 minutes after the cigarette, and you actually take a CO reading on their breath, they will be producing into the room about 72 ppm of carbon monoxide from the left. Yeah, it's a common thing. Like I said,
wow.
So, is it something to be concerned about? Anytime you're over the 5 ppm level, something is wrong. And with a vent-free product, it's going to rapidly get worse and worse. So yes, it could rise dramatically. So to cover your liability, and I've also worked as an expert witness, and I work in documentation and how to, we will say, cover your ass. But right, that's what you're doing. You got to remember, home inspectors are sitting in a very libelous position. You are coming in, people conceive you are an expert. If something's wrong, you're going to get blamed, and that's a lot of what you go through. So preparing a report in a way that is properly documented to cover your ass, where you're not going to get sued and not going to challenge your toys, that's what you want to do. It means picky. When you do that report, you got to prepare it to the avenue. You can't take judgment calls in. Orally, you may discuss it differently, but I would raise the caution, and I would simply do this. We're reading, and this is what we call passing the burden to act. Now, if you all you have to do is inform the consumer that, hey, you need to get a competent person to check this out. When you've done that, you have passed the burden to act to your customer. You also have what's called last clear chance. So by informing them and recommending them an action, at that point, you've passed the burden to act, and you've lowered your ability to be sued.
When you say to pass it on and have somebody, should we also say the certified by the organization that you meant? Would you recommend that?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I would say get a certified person in to check this, because like I said, just the more education someone has, but at the same token, does that mean they're good? You've got to have something. If you've recommended an NFI, that's the highest certification for a gas hearth. Now they can get somebody else, but again, you've given them a way to go, and from that standpoint, you have removed, any issues. Now it also comes into play. You're responsible for reporting to the person who's hired you. So it's not your responsibility. We'll say that you're coming in as a inspector and someone's buying the home. That will be the primary purpose. If you have passed the burden to act to your client, it's up to them to inform the other. You don't have to go out of your way to inform that existing homeowner.
Good. All right, Jerry, I'm going to give you 2 real life examples that I'm pretty familiar with. One of them you're probably familiar with as well. One is the Coach Rivera's house. I know a little bit about that, but the first one I want to talk about is we inspected a house in Mooresville. It's probably been 5 years ago now. And anyway, they turned the gas logs on Christmas Eve or something. They were having a Christmas party and caught on fire in the chimney somewhere. The house caught on fire. And lots of damage. Anyway, I didn't find out about it until after. One of my guys did the home inspection. The house was new, by the way. I mean, it was bought from a builder. I mean, it was only about 6 months old. And I guess their homeowner's insurance, brought everybody in. So I was sued. The manufacturer was sued. The builder was sued. Everybody. And then it was initially the fireman's report. They thought it was this. They thought that somehow a squirrel had got down into the flue and built a nest, and that caught it on fire. But I think what wound up happening, they had all these fire investigators come out. It was something with the gas line. I think it might have been that CSST or something. I think they determined it had a pinhole leak or something, and that's what ignited that. Anyway, I think that's what finally happened, and I think the manufacturer or something. I didn't get dinged too bad, thank goodness. But can you speak to that? Have you seen that sort of thing, or what would you have to say about that?
Yeah, like I said, I've worked as an expert witness in a lot of cases all over the U.S. And many times, and like when that particular incident happened, I usually do a lot of research, but commonly it could be a gas leak in the wall. Okay, there could be pipe joined in the wall or whatever. This is where what happened to you is you got subrogated against. Subrogation means the homeowner's insurance company is going to call everybody that's involved throughout, and that's where you got to file with your insurance company to defend yourself. And many times I'll be on an inspection and there's 20 and 30 people there. You got expert witnesses. If you went to this one, more than likely, everybody had an expert, everybody had an inspector. My expertise is in chimneys and venting and standard of care in the chimney industry. Okay. So what happened there was usually that would be defined. And when I read that case appeared to me like there was a leak somewhere in the wall. But then it ignited behind the wall, went up through the wall. But see, that's the problem with being a tradesperson. And when you offer an inspection service, things beyond your control will come back to haunt you. This is why it is so vastly important. Home inspectors, chimney sweeps, all technicians, they should always thoroughly document what they had, what they saw, photographs of it. We started teaching photographic documentation many years ago. And in the photograph, I mean, it's like if I'm called in an expert, you had to provide all your files. They're going to pay somebody like me to look at all this stuff. And what they're also looking for is they're looking for what they call a hired gun. They're looking for, and in the insurance industry, I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but there's a lot of whores. Okay, that's what they're actually called. And what they
I know what you're talking about.
Right. What they are, they're a person who is hired they give a opinion based on who they're working for. And that's not a competent expert.
And they'll swing both ways too.
I'll bet you better believe it. It depends on who they're working for. So I've worked actually both sides. I've worked defense. I've worked prosecution sides. These cases go on. Sometimes I've seen them go on for up to 10 years. I've actually been involved in a case that can go on. So what you're wanting to do is, but what they're trying to do is isolate them. If you get subrogated against, it's a part of the course of doing business. The first thing is report it to your insurance company. You're paying them to defend you. Don't take it personal. If it's business, don't take it personal, but then that's going to enable you to go back and look at it. But in that case, I think that was what started that fire. I worked many years ago. There was a big development in Lake Norman, in Mooresville. Right. I was in the chimney business, and we had a home burned down there. And it's in Lake Norman, and the Iredell County building inspectors then got in real big trouble, and they ordered that every chimney in that development be repaired. Okay, so we relined, I think, 42 chimneys in that development. And then there was another contractor, he did like 22 of them. But we actually we relined the entire neighborhood. There's one development, if you ever inspect it, that every chimney in that neighborhood, probably about 90% the chimneys have been relined. The chimneys have been made taller. They didn't meet height requirements because when they had this one fire, it all broke loose really bad. I'll share you the location when we're off the line, but it's like I say, it's in your market area or anybody else in the Charlotte, Mooresville, Concord market area. You could get caught in that neighborhood.
Wow. Another case, I want to give you a real life case, all the people out there, and this made a lot of headlines because it was our head coach of our football team, Ron Rivera. I think he had family over to watch during one of the playoffs or something. But anyway, they had the fireplace going, and it caught on fire. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, I think when they investigated, it was $500,000 worth of damage. You know, he's got a pretty nice house. It was a crack in the firebox, but not only that, there was some sort of there was a base or it was missing. There was supposed to be some sort of plate under there, and that caught the floor on fire. Am I correct about the? Are you familiar with that one? What happened?
I did a lot of research on that. The Ron Riviera fire was very unique. First of all, this was with gas logs. So I want you to understand that gas logs have probably created as many structure fires as we've seen from wood burning. I want you to identify that. Gas logs actually have certain characteristics that really scare you. The second thing is the Ron Riviera fire was what we call a precast masonry fireplace. There's different brands out there. One is Isokern. You may see Fire Rock. There's Mason Light. There's Sonoran. But what these are precast fireplaces. Some of them come in a whole fireplace. If you're on the West Coast, we have units called Rampart Generals that are tilt-up units, but they're built in a factory. Okay, so in these fireplaces, they are what we call a zero clearance box. In other words, you can put them into a home and you can put them on a combustible floor. But the provision for putting them on a combustible floor is there is a steel riser, and the riser goes under the fireplace. And what the riser is for, it raises the fireplace up so there's ventilation goes under it. Now, in this particular case, he was using gas logs. They burn them all day long into the night. They had won the playoffs that day, and later that night, the heat transfer got to the wood. Since there was no riser, there was no ventilation, so the heat got to it. Wood, and this is one thing that you guys need to understand. I would dare say that just about, and this is a pretty blanket statement. I would dare say that just about every chimney in America violates clearance standards. You're supposed to,
Wow.
yeah, very seriously. We don't recognize the problem with zero clearance. People that build them, they think brick doesn't burn, which is true, but the brick will radiate heat through, and then the wood goes through what we call pyrolyzation, or vaporization is the new term. So what happens is when you have brand new wood that comes out of a lumber yard, it's going to take about 650 degrees for that to ignite. But if the wood is in improper clearance to the masonry, the wood is going to go through the process of pyrolysis. And pyrolysis is where the ignition temperature of the wood is going to be lowered each time it's heated. So when you get a house that may be 20, 25, 30 years old, and we've operated this for many years and we haven't had combustibles, the ignition temperature of that wood that has gone through the pyrolyzation or pyrolysis or the vaporization process as it's becoming known, it can ignite. We used to find it in around 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, we have cases that have ignited and tested at 178 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is the real problem. When we test hearth appliances, what's happening here, it is tested that in certain periods of time that the temperature will not rise above 90 degrees above ambient in a certain period of time. Okay. Now we're finding cases of that if you have zero clearance, you're going through this, all of a sudden that wood is now going to ignite. Now, for the ignition to occur, we have to have oxygen. It takes three things for ignition. It takes the proper amount of heat, it takes the proper amount of air, and it takes the proper amount of heat to do this. Now, many times in structure fires and in homes, the wood will actually smolder, and it can smolder for days or weeks. I know a documented case that's about 5 miles from where I'm sitting on Highway 49. It's across from Central Cabarrus High School, if you know where that is, Preston. Across the street. This fire went on for 3 days in the wall. The fire department was actually there because of the smell of burning wood They couldn't locate the fire. And then after 3 days, the wall caught on fire. They walked in, all of a sudden the wall is burning, coming through what we call a split level house or tri-level house. The fireplace was downstairs, studded wall behind it, zero clearance to combustibles, and the wood ignited in the wall. But that took 3 days because it's got to get the oxygen to it. It's kind of like a charcoal fire. So and it's not going to ignite and go up in flames until we get the oxygen to the fire.
Awesome, awesome.
Now,
Well, Jay, I'm going to go through a couple of things here that I'm hoping will help the home inspectors. Primary audience here is home inspectors. Each part of the system, if they're looking at it, what do you think? What should they look for? So let's start off with, all right, they're inspecting, the system. They're looking at the firebox. What should they look for there? Or what could be wrong?
okay, I'm going to take you there, but I'm going to take you through a little path to get there, Preston. The first thing I want every home inspector to look to understand is water is the number one deterioration factor of a masonry chimney. Number one. Okay. So, but a chimney that has water entry issues will be very easy to note when you pull up in the driveway. You don't have to necessarily go on the roof. What you want to start doing, and one of the things that I tell people, and please don't take this as anything against someone that doesn't have this ability, but you've got to be able to recognize changes in the colorization of the material. If you look at a chimney and you look at the brick, and as the brick comes down, if you see discoloration, if you see darkening areas, that is your key right now that we have a water entry issue. Okay. So one of the things I want to encourage every home inspector to do is look at the brick itself or the stone or the mortar joints or the chase, whatever is exposed to the elements. If you have water entry, you're probably going to see discoloration because what happens is chimneys take on water and a brick is just like a sponge. Well, as the water gets into it, it's going to have mildew, it's going to build up mold. So the first thing I teach a chimney sweep to do is look at the colors. The colors are going to tell us everything. If it's an exterior chimney on the outside of the house, look at the areas where it's corbelled. If it's corbelled out, look right below the corbelling. If the corbelling below that, the water's running off, gets onto the corbelling, it saturates the brick. This is telling you that you have interior damage because the problem we have for many, many years, the mortar that was specified and used was regular inside of a chimney was a type N, type S mortar. Now, a few years ago, if you look at the codes and standards change, and they now say you've got to use a non-water soluble refractory inside of the chimney. That's for your fireplace, your smoke chamber, between the flue tiles. The problem is very few are going to be built that have that, and the vast majority of masonry fireplaces were built before that was even recognized in the 90s. So what you have is you're going to have water getting into the chimney. If the water gets in the chimney and it saturates the mortar is then going to deteriorate. It's deteriorating from the water itself, it's softening. What's also happening is it's weakening. And as the chimney weakens, as the mortar weakens, when we heat the fireplace up and use it, we go through differential expansion in the system. So in actuality, if you could look at a flue liner, which is a flue tile, terracotta clay, that flue tile is actually moving and it is getting bigger. It is changing shape. Now, these are microscopic changes you can't see with the eye. But what this is doing is we have unequal expansion. So what happens then is the mortar is ground away. The mortar loses its adhesion. Whenever you look at a fireplace, if I go in and I look at a fireplace, if I have eroded mortar joints, if I have brick that are cracked, those type of things on masonry, that is a water entry issue. That is not from the fire. That's a water entry issue that is eating that up. And the vast majority of chimneys in America were never built to repel the water properly. The chimney crown is the top of the chimney. That's the concrete that's on top. BIA is the Brick Institute of America. Now, we live in the Charlotte, North Carolina market area. A masonry chimney built to BIE standards, Brick Institute of America, will have a chimney crown that will overhang the chimney an inch and a half all the way around. So what you would do is the crown's the concrete on top. Commonly, we see what's called a crown wash or a crown splay. That's where the mortar is just laid on top of the chimney. It's usually
Yeah.
regular type S or N. So what will happen is after a very short period of time, usually within a few days after building the chimney, we've got cracks in our walls. The water comes through, it holds inside. Now, when they build the chimney is built out of clay tile. Clay tile, depending on the market area, may be 12-inch length. It may be 24-inch length. In Charlotte, you're only going to find 24-inch flue tile in chimneys. In parts of the country, you'll find 12-inch lengths. Depends on what that building supply offers. So what they've got is between every flue tile, there is mortar, but the mortar is the wrong mortar. It doesn't stand up. That's why you're commonly going to see if a chimney sweep comes in, the chimney sweep will then run a camera through the system, and the chimney sweep is going to detect voids in the mortar. Now, here's the problem. A lot of times, I want you to understand this. If there are gaps in the chimney, the common person's thoughts are that fire is going to go out of this gap and is going to leave the chimney. And that is false. That doesn't happen unless the chimney goes under positive pressure. When you have a leak in a chimney, a hole, the chimney is negative. It pulls air into the chimney. It doesn't push the flames out unless it goes positive. Now, the problem with pulling the air in is the air pulled into the flue tile joints will then affect the draft of the system, and the fireplace will then smoke back in the room. With today's homes and less makeup air and cooler flue gas temperatures, this is now getting to be more and more important.
Well, man, I got my meeting with my guys in the morning. I'm gonna play. This is gonna be my meeting tomorrow. I'm just sitting here as you're talking, thinking about all the chimneys I've looked at. And, ooh.
Well, it is, that's the problem. Like I said, I entered this industry in 1981. Okay,
Right.
became a chimney sweep. I looked up. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I wrote a book about it. It's called Chaos to Reinvention: How I Got in the Business, Everything I Did. So anyway, I came into this. Well, my difference was when I came into this in 81 to 82, I got involved with associations. I was president of the North Carolina Chimney Sweep Association. I then later was president of the National Chimney Sweep Association. I was president of the Chimney Safety Institute of America. I did the National Guild and the Chimney Safety Institute for a period of 6 years. Now, I also did research. I've been teaching seminars since back in the 80s, and I wrote technical journals. As far as what I've talked about on the interior chimneys, in the mid 90s, I wrote a technical journal called Chimney Fires, Causes, Effects, and Evaluations. It was written from the technical aspect, and it's actually available at the following website free of charge. If you go to CSIA, which stands for Chimney Safety Institute of America, CSIA.org, if you will simply, you can get this free download of this technical journal, and that's what I wrote. But in doing this, I did a lot of research myself and research we hired, and that's where I got a lot of my expertise. And like I said, I'll be glad to send you links. So it's different books. Like I said, but to be honest with you, this is the manual right here. I'm sure since you and I are on cam, we can see each other. This was the printed version I did back then, and this is all about the development. I've also researched fireplaces in other countries. I do presentations on the history of masonry chimneys. I'm putting one together right now, the history of the factory built chimney. It's like, have you ever heard the term, Preston, zero clearance fireplace?
I've heard of it.
Okay. We may call them prefabs, we may call them zero clearance, we may call them factory built or whatever. Well, here's the
Right.
true story. Here's why they're called zero clearance. These were invented in 1952 by a man by the name of Robert Thoman. Robert Thoman introduced and invented and patented the thermosiphon fireplace, which is the factory built fireplace. In 1952 was when these rolled out. From 1952 to 1958, both the fireplace and the chimney were UL listed at zero clearance, meant wood could touch it top to bottom. In 1958, UL found out they had made a mistake. So at this point, they relisted the fireplaces, or they made the people go through, which means today that there are no zero clearance, but the name held. And on factory built fireplaces, the bad thing about factory built fireplaces is the insulation requirements change with every manufacturer and every type of pipe. You can even look at a pipe, believe it or not, and you can inspect this fireplace. And that pipe may have stamped on it 2-inch clearance. Now, the problem you've got is that fireplace could have tested independently, and because of the fireplace design, you can find pipe that is stamped 2 inches that has a clearance of 5 inches. So you need to be aware of this. To me, right now, the biggest rising problem is we have stopped using brick. We're using a lot of factory built units. We're using a lot of chases, the wood chases built out of
Yeah.
different things. And what you've got here is you've got a lot of you've got improper clearances. Again, improper clearances, that's the safety factor on fire. And that's going to be concealed behind the wall. And that's why you as an inspector has got to properly document this, what you can do and what you didn't do. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm going to change my report as soon as this thing is over. Man, good stuff. I mean, well, good information that I wasn't even aware of. Well, tell us, Jerry, a little bit about what should the inspectors be looking for with the damper and the throat?
Okay.
What should we look for there?
Okay, the damper in the throat. What you're looking for is number one is, does the damper operate freely? Number two, does the damper close? But dampers are going to be leakage spots. There are no throat dampers that are airtight. They will all leak. Okay, so what you're looking at is that's going to be an issue. I'm going to look for rust on my damper. I'm going to look for dampers that don't move rapidly. Now, you also have what we call, some people will call this a heatilator box. They will call it a heat form box, different types, but you will run into once in a while, depending on the part of the country you're in, you will run into a steel box that is installed in masonry and has a clay tile. Are you with me so far?
Yep.
Okay, those were invented by, believe it or not, the Chemical Toilet Company in 1926. The Chemical Toilet Company was located in Syracuse, New York. So they wanted a product because cast iron toilets were going out of style. Okay, so what they did, they wanted to diversify. So they invented the first masonry formed fireplace. And later, the name of that company became Heatilator. Okay, so the Heatilator Corporation actually started out as a toilet manufacturer. Okay, so, but anyway, these steel boxes are put in. They've got an average life expectancy of 25 to 50 years. Some of these they stopped being installed properly probably in the 80s in most market areas. If you go in certain parts of the country like California, this is a predominant fireplace. So these units have been affected by water. They've been affected by firing. So what I'm looking for, if I have a steel fireplace and a masonry chimney, I'm looking for my handle and my damper to operate freely. If it doesn't operate freely, that's telling me I got rust and corrosion, but I also likely have warpage. So if I have that situation, I'm going to look up through the damper. This only takes a flashlight. And what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for how that smoke chamber. Now the smoke chamber is the area from the damper or throat up to where the flue tile starts. And these are like a metal four-sided funnel going up. And what you'll
Right.
do if you look at the very end, you're looking for warpage. And warpage will usually be where the sides of the smoke chamber start bowing in. But what happens is, the reason the damper's not working right, the fireplace has become warped. There's also a metal smoke shelf. Now the smoke shelf is the flat area behind the fireplace. So commonly the deterioration will start on the smoke shelf that you can't see. Now, these
Right.
fireplaces will also, probably 40% of them that you will encounter, and maybe depends on what was sold in your market area, many of them have tubes coming through the fireplace running the air out. If you look up, you may have 3, 4, 5 tubes, and you cannot get your hand through these tubes. You can't take the damper out. If it's a steel formed fireplace at the age it's in, I'm going to tell you the best thing to do is advise that they have someone do a video inspection of the interior and get a chimney sweep in to look at this to see what's going on and pass the expertise and pass the burden to act. Those are a lot of problems. And the other reason they're a problem is many people installed these fireplaces and they don't have masonry behind the box. It's commonly that you cut one of these boxes out because they can be cut out and removed. And when you cut the box out, you got a wood stud running right up against it.
Wow, good information. Well, Jay, tell us a little bit about the smoke chamber and the flue area. What should we look for there?
Okay, if it's a masonry chimney, what I'm going to be looking for is the height of the smoke chamber. I'm going to be looking at the shape, and I'm going to be looking at any obstructions or anything that can cause what we call turbulence. Once the smoke leaves the fireplace, goes through the throat, the goal in venting design is that we have no turbulence in the venting system. Turbulence is going to cause us issues. So what you should be looking at when you look through the damper, you should be looking at a smoke chamber that these are the rules of smoke chambers. They should be no taller than the fireplace is wide. They should be no deeper than the fireplace is depth. So they should not have an angle of more than 45 degrees from vertical. So what we're looking for is a path. Now what you're going to find is you're going to find smoke chambers that may be 8, 10, 5 foot tall. And what this is doing is giving you a tremendous area where the smoke and the gas is cool. So what happens from this point? We have poor performance, we have smoke back issues, we have excessive creosote. Now, in the smoke chamber sizing that I just told you about only came in the codes and standards in 1996. Prior to that, the smoke chambers were not addressed. You and I are in the state of North Carolina. In the state of North Carolina, we had North Carolina Building Code that started in 1936. Then we went to Southern Building Code. Now we are on the International Residential Code. So what you've got to look at is what was the code at the time it was built, but then you've got to look at the code of today. And this is what you commonly, in my opinion, this is where we get lost as inspectors. Many times it may meet the codes and standards of the time it was built. As an example, I'm going to say that when we built a house in 1990, it was legal to put uninsulated wire across ceramic cables in the attic area. That met code, but it's not good. So what we've got to do as inspectors is recognize what the code was at the time, but then to cover our liability, we've got to recommend the following, which is this needs an upgrade to the system. I never say today's codes. I see a danger. So what I want to do is make my customer aware. I'm going to use my knowledge and base my opinions on what I'm doing. A lot of times people base their opinions on code. Code doesn't mean it's going to work. It can work and not meet code. So what you've got to be doing is looking at what's going on. Now, you asked about flue areas. One thing I want to caution you on, if you walk into a house and you have one chimney and more than one fireplace in that chimney, usually you're going to find offsets in the flue lining for the lower appliance. It's going to go around that fireplace upstairs, and when it goes around the fireplace, you're going to commonly find gaps, and they can be big enough to put your fist into. When you build a chimney, you're supposed to take the flue tiles and you miter them with a saw just like you would miter wood. But the problem is, in normal construction, mitering flue tiles is seldom found. So if I see a basement fireplace, I'm going to be very concerned that I have offsets in that upper area. In fact, when I've taught home inspectors at Mecklenburg County before, they told me later, at what you told me, I started looking at, and I can't find a basement fireplace built properly. And I said, congratulations. I've been in this almost 40 years. I haven't found one either. So you want to be aware of all those things. Again, chimneys were not judged as an issue for years. And if you go through the history of what goes on, in the 60s, the 70s, nobody used a fireplace. They were simply decorative. We had a fire once in a while. But in the 1970s, we decided, the Arabs decided through OPEC they were going to hold America hostage. President
Right.
Jimmy Carter got on, said, hey, burn your fireplace, wear a sweater. And the popularity of wood burning increased. Now, all of a sudden, we got all these fireplaces built in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Nobody ever thought they would use them. Then all of a sudden we're using them, and now 20, 30, 40 years later, we're finding paralysis, we're finding bad air quality, we're finding mold, we're finding mildew issues, all related to a chimney.
Wow, that is great information, man. Great. And Jerry's going to give some information here at the end so you can follow up and get some of this information for yourself. Let me ask you, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want to see if you had anything to add about the crown and the chimney cap. I know you talked about the wrong types of cement being used and that sort of thing, but what more should home inspectors know about the crown and the chimney cap?
Okay, number one, and again, I'm going to recognize in what I'm talking about right now that home inspectors and most standard of care do not get on the roof. Am I correct, Preston?
You're correct. Yeah, they can if they want to, but they're not required, especially if the pitch is, dangerous.
And the same thing in the chimney world. We go under what's called a level 1, level 2, level 3. But at the same time, we don't want to, we don't want to jeopardize our safety. Sorry, my main goal is to go home safe and have dinner with somebody tonight at my home with my kids. That's
Right.
that's what everybody's goal is. But what you want to do and what I'm trying to share with you today is how to spot issues from the ground. Okay?
Right.
How to spot issues from the ground. The first thing to be aware of, if you see that your crown or some type of cap does not project over the chimney at least an inch and a half, I'm telling you, you have water entry issues. I'm telling you right now. If you look at that and below it, you're going to see the darkened areas. If you take a closer look, you're going to see other things. From the ground, you can use zoom lenses. You can see, a lot of people are using drones today, other things to go up there and look. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that overhang. If the overhang is not out there, we know we got a problem. The next thing is if you ever go up on top, you're hardly ever going to find a chimney crown that is not cracked. Okay. They're boring them out of normal mortar, the same they built the chimney out of. It's not going to hold up. This should be a solid concrete slab poured on top, the neck and overhanging the chimney. And it's called a BIE style crown. The next thing that you've got to look for is the clay tile should never be bonded to the crown. In other words, so people are aware, when the clay tile heats up, the clay tile is going to expand outward. It is going to turn into an oblong shape. It will get taller. So if the mortar is bonded to the chimney crown, what's going to happen is that clay tile is going to expand and it's going to crack that mortar. The expansion can even happen from the sunlight hitting the clay tile. And it's common that, believe it or not, that most chimney crowns on new chimneys were cracked within 24 hours of being poured. And as it goes through, we have shrinkage from the curing process. It takes 28 days for mortar to cure. During this process, it's shrinking. So the crown area is really, really big. If the water's coming down the flue, we're going to see that. But if the water can penetrate through the crown, it's going to go into the masonry and then it's going to be retained in the masonry. Then we have to worry about freeze-thaw cycles. Every single time that it drops below freezing, the chimney is going to expand from freeze-thaw. So the numerous freeze-thaw cycles you go through. So if you look at it, and if you're in moderate temperatures, like you and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, okay? Freeze-thaw cycles occur every time the temperature drops below freezing and goes above. So we are more subject in a moderate temperature that drops below freezing at night and gets into the 60s the next day than someone that lives in 20 degrees highs and 40-degree lows. They're going through one freeze-thaw cycle. You and I, we're going through them every single day. That's putting us stress. But again, it goes back. If you've got these water entry issues, if you start looking tomorrow, you look at your pictures, you look at that brick, you're going to see the diagram of the water. Looking at the chimney and being able to judge it by the colorization and the discoloration, the other things. Now, I want to also talk about, identify effervescence. Effervescence is where you got water getting into it. mixes with the salts, brings it out, and you see this effervescence on the chimney. That's signifying water is getting in. It's now leaching out. Also, if water gets into the chimney over a period of time, what's going to happen is it's going to drain eventually down and can rot out the foundation, take the footing away. Then we have settlement issues. You see the chimney moving away. Because another problem is most chimneys do not have a proper footing or foundation below the frost line, everything they're supposed to have. So what happens is they start moving. You look up to where the chimney and the house meet, and all of a sudden there's this little gap getting bigger and bigger as you go up. And these are all things, like I said, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today is the easy things. These are easy things that you can see just walking up. A lot of times I could pull up in a house, I look at it, look here, and I've been flew across the country for this. And I see all the problems in 5 minutes. Now what I've got to do is locate, that's what we call cause and origin. So I've got to look at the cause, the origin, and come up with the effect of what's happening in the house.
I hear you, brother. Yeah, I had one time that, well, I've had a couple, but I had one, I could just about stick my arm. I could see daylight between the chimney and the house. But the big telltale sign for me when I drive up is if that chimney starting to pull away, you'll see those shingles. The flashing that's through it will start jacking up those shingles, and you'll see those, those shingles jacked up right there near the chimney.
Right.
But well, Jerry, tell us a little bit about thimble or breaching on the utility flue, furnace, water heater, or boiler or freestanding stove.
Okay, what we call in the chimney industry is a flue that goes to a central heating system, a domestic hot water heater. If you're in the Northeast, it could be a boiler, it could be a freestanding stove or whatever. And then we're going to talk about masonry chimneys and doing this. What we have here is that we have a chimney that's going to be tile lined on the inside. Now, the purpose of the lining in a chimney, believe it or not, Preston, if I tell you it was not for fire safety, would you understand that?
I didn't know that, but I'm listening. I want to hear. I'm intrigued.
The purpose of flue liner and why flue liner was put in the chimneys and the first standard that was ever written, the purpose of flue liner is to protect the fragile chimney itself, the masonry materials, which are alkaline, from the corrosive effects of the flue gases. That's what flue lining is in there actually for. Does it add a degree of fire safety? Yes. But at the same time, the original was it's a protective layer that stops the attack of the corrosions and the acids on the masonry materials. So that's the purpose there. Now, when you build a chimney, if you went down to the brickyard and you were going to build a chimney, there are clay tiles made to have a hole cut into them. And the hole would be a 6-inch thimble or an 8-inch thimble. The hole is already cut in the flue liner. Now, you then take the thimble, which is the part that goes through the wall. The red terracotta should slide inside of that clay tile and then slide flush on the inside, just so you goes in and goes up. Now, majority of builders and masons did not use that clay tile that has the hole cut in it. When they built the chimney, they simply butt the flue tile up to the outside and they take a crowbar or a hammer and bust through. So then at that point, what's going to happen is you're going to have a gap right where that clay tile goes in the wall. Now, if you reach your hand inside of that to where it meets the clay tile, I'm looking for any gaps or whatever. The other thing you can do is you can put a camera on a selfie stick, run it down there, and take a picture from inside there. Or you could take your cell phone and put it on video and put it in with your arm and just go around. I'm looking for any gaps in that area. If I have gaps in that area, two things can happen. Number one, remember about the air leakage. If I have air leakage coming in, I'm going to affect my draft and performance. Number two, if I have air leakage coming in and I'm burning wood and the fresh air can meet the hot flue gases, this is going to be the origin of a chimney fire. Number three, if the chimney goes under positive pressure can start at any time. It can start from wind movements. It can start from any number of things. If the chimney goes positive, now it's going to force the smoke and the gases out. If it forces the smoke and the gases out, it's going to go up behind the flue tile. Flue tile are supposed to be installed inside of a masonry chimney and have an airspace around them to allow expansion and contraction. You have a minimum and a maximum airspace when you build the chimney. Many chimneys don't have the airspace. Some do have the airspace. We don't know. But what you've got to do as an inspector is be able to inspect this wall. We would call that the wall pass-through area. We would call it the thimble. We may call it the breaching. Depends on what part of the country you're in. It's like right now, Preston, if I asked you, do you know what a hose pipe is?
Yes.
Okay. Do you realize in many parts of the country, if you ask someone what a hose pipe is, they're not going to know the answer? That's a garden
Right.
hose. You and I know
Right.
what you and I from the South, we know what a drop cord is. But if I ask for a drop cord, somebody else say, I don't know what that is. You got to call an extension cord. So in
Right.
describing what I'm talking about, that's why a lot of times I'll use a term like I talk breaching, I talk thimble, I talk wall pass through. Depends on what they work in that region since we're broadcasting out across the country.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Tell us, Jerry, what are the issues if you have multiple appliances going into the same chimney? What you look for? What are the issues there?
Okay, are we talking about going in the same flue or separate flues, Preston?
Same one.
In the same flue. The problem we would have there, and again, I'm going to go back to North Carolina Building Code. Under North Carolina Building Code, at one time, we were allowed to dual vent, which means put two appliances into one flue. What you've got to do is you've got to have enough capacity for the flue gases for each. Show you an example. If you had an 8 by 12 flue liner, an 8 by 12 flue liner, if you measure inside of it, could be 6 by 10 or it could be 7 by 11 or somewhere in between there. That is our available flue area. So then if we have a pipe coming in, we're going to say that it is a 6 by 10 flue. That gives us 60 square inches of draft. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, now
Yes.
we're going to say that they have a 8-inch furnace vented into it, an old oil furnace. You with me so far? It's got an 8-inch outlet. Now we've got
Yep.
that going in. That 8-inch round pipe is going to take approximately 50 square inches of draft area. Okay, now that only leaves us 10 more potential inches for the other appliance. And if we have a 4-inch water heater, guess what? We have now went over what we have. So what you've got to be able to do to dual vent is you've got to have enough capacity to handle those appliances. Now on the reverse side, the problem is, and we're going to go to the water heater. If I had an oil furnace and a water heater vented into that flue, and I was properly sized for both appliances, now, in the summertime, that water heater is still going to operate, but that furnace is no longer going to operate. So now we have a flue that is oversized for that appliance. When the flue is oversized, it increases the residence time. The residence time is the length of time that smoke remains in the venting system. Now, if we increase the residence time, what's going to happen is our flue gases are going to cool. As the flue gases cool, condensation is going to form. Remember, the
Right.
number one deteriorating factor in a masonry chimney is moisture. That can be condensation. What you have to remember is every 100,000 BTUs of natural gas produces 1 gallon of water vapor. Okay, so
Wow.
what we have to do in venting is we got to keep our flue gases hot enough that they exhaust outside before they condense. Now, in the home building industry, the energy codes are now dictating that we got to have less and less temperature going into the chimney. So what we've got to do is maintain the temperature of the combustion products in the vent and keep them above what we call the dew point, which is when condensation builds up in the system, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. So they're cooling off, and you're getting the water vapor before it gets out. I know you talked a lot about water entry and how to spot it earlier in the interview, but are there any gaps in that you'd like to fill in, like, how to spot water entry, water retainage, or interior issues? What should we be looking for?
It's all going to be in that colorization. That's going to be the number one thing you're going to look for. You're looking for the colorization. If you have moisture, you're going to have a change in the exterior. Now, if you got more involved and we'll say that you had a camera system to lower inside of a flue, your condensation, you're going to see it. But again, I'm trying to deal with where your requirements are. And if you want to go over that to another level, then yes, there's a lot of things you can see from inside. Like what I'm going to see if I look down a flue and it has condensation, okay? I'm commonly going to see green buildup inside. I'm going to see white residue inside. White residue inside the flue is common from use of gas appliances. Now, the other side that's going on, you and I are in Charlotte, and fuel oil, and if you don't understand my, that is FUEL, fuel oil is commonly used in certain areas of the country. Natural gas appliances have greatly increased in efficiency over the last 20 to 30 years, and the utilities are pushing that. But in certain areas of the Northeast, there is no natural gas. There are no natural gas lines. So everything up there is still fuel oil in a lot of these areas. Now they are producing a lot of what they call condensing boilers. The condensing boilers now have such low flue gas temperatures that they are building up a pile of condensation in the system, and this condensation is highly acidic, much as we have with high efficient gas. That's why you're seeing now, and you're probably going to start noticing this more and more, but you're going to see more and more chimneys that have plastic flue liners into the chimney. Flexible plastics are big. In a lot of European countries, they use glass. So venting is changing rapidly. As the weatherization changes, as the energy codes change, this is going to bring more and more challenges into the venting. And if the venting is improper, this is what you got to be concerned about. If the venting is improper, we're going to affect the indoor air quality of the home. The people are going to have more breathing issues. The kids are going to have more bronchitis. We're going to have an instance of higher risk to heart. If you have poor air quality, your heart is working harder to get there. So venting of products, fireplaces, is a severe health risk, and that is where it goes. People associate fire with chimneys. And I was on an industry discussion with this morning. It's about we got to promote performance, we got to promote safety, we got to promote maintenance, we got to promote indoor air quality, we got to promote cleaner environments. This is what the people want in this world today. And so that's why, as home inspectors, you are on the front lines. You can look at it, and the home inspector can spot these issues. A lot of times, this is what you go through, and I understand this. And, I'm going to ask you, how do you meet this challenge, which is, well, if I find everything wrong, these homeowners are going to quit. These real estate agents aren't going to call me anymore. I mean, to me, that's got to be the leading challenge to a home inspector is you see all these issues, but if I start reporting them, Joe, the real estate agent, ain't going to call me no more. Okay, I'm serious. So I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you, is that a common thought in home inspectors?
I tell my guys it's a tightrope all the time. What you're alluding to there is a deal killer. If you get known as a deal killer, and I always say, I've never killed a house. So a couple of them committed suicide. The house is the house. I can't sugarcoat anything, but you also don't want to be an alarmist. And scare people over stuff. But if there's an issue, there's an issue. And, to me, there's two things. You want to be thorough but not alarmist. And it is a tightrope because the realtors are the ones that recommend you. But, man, if you got something that's going to burn this house down, I've been to that house where you got the fire and all the investigators out there. And, boy, that'll scare the bejesus out of you. And thank God nobody got hurt. So, I don't care what the realtor says or does or whatever. I got to protect my clients from that. You know what I mean? But you're exactly right. It is a tightrope.
Right. See, that to me, that's a fine line you walk. And here's what you've got to do. And this is my advice to everyone that's listening to this. Okay, guys, I'm on some of your home inspection forums. Okay, I'm actually been watching and reading. In fact, I put a thing on this morning on, I believe it was Home Inspector Exchange Group. You're on that, Preston, I believe, right, on Facebook. And it was about propane tanks. And the inspector asked the question, what do I do about propane tanks? Well, I put the answer on there. Propane tanks are required to be certified from the manufacturer. They're good for 12 years. After 12 years, well, you have to recertify a propane tank. From that point, it's got to be recertified every 5 years. So to me, as a home inspector, one of the things I'm going to check is if I've got an above ground tank, what's the date of certification? That's simple. That's not saying what you're doing, But it also, that's how you do it. How long does that take? Just a minute to walk out there and see when the date of certification was. And see, the above ground tanks are owned by the propane companies. They're going to service these. It's not owned by the customer. It's owned by the propane company. So it's just a matter of educating people. And that's what you've got to do in your social networking. This is what I tell people. Like I said, I'm a business coach. I work with people all across the country. I do public speaking, all kinds of stuff. What you've got to do is you've got to build awareness. You've got to speak socially. Preston, what you're doing right here, this is the greatest thing in the world. That's why I connected up with you. First, you got my attention because of them britches. Okay, those britches, standing beside Tim Dave's like, who is this guy? Okay, so then I saw you had a podcast. I said, hey, let me reach out. And that's what I did. You had no idea who I was. We live right in the same market area. But then when I reached out, I said, hey, love to be a guest on your show. Love to share some information. That's what you as home inspectors have to do. You've got to get that information out. You've got to become that authority. So, and once you do that, your believability increases. And what will happen is if you do that, you will become in very high demand because what you're doing is you're building that. If you're a home inspector and you're listening to this, I got to ask a question. How many reviews do you have for you on the internet? How many do you have? If you don't, you need to have a goal. And Preston, I don't know how many guys you got. You need to have a goal. How many Google reviews are you going to get every week? Because this is how you build your business. A lot of times, it's like if you look at a wealth seminar, wealthy people will have more than one income stream. And that's what tradespeople have to do in order to be successful. You have got to get more than one source for income. And that's where a lot of people look. It's like, it's great to network with realtors, guys, but let me tell you something. I'm a homeowner. I'm going to check you out. I'm going to look at your Google reviews. And this is the next thing. If you have a bad Google review, answer the review. Don't let it hang out there. Address it. This is going to build your business. If you're not actively promoting your authority on social, on Twitter, on Facebook, YouTube channels, doing videos, you're looking for somebody else to build your business. And what you've got to do is develop your methods of bringing the clients to you. Don't depend on one source of business revenue. If you do, you are not self-employed. You're at the mercy of your customer that's in the middle.
Absolutely, Jerry. You and I sing out the same hymn book, man. I say the same thing. I'm glad you did hook up with it because you're quite possibly the most knowledgeable person on fireplaces on the face of that earth. And you're definitely my go-to guy on fireplaces. And after this, you might be everybody else, every other home inspector's go-to guy. But speaking of that, I do want to get a little bit into your coaching. But all right, so the website that we can get that booklet is, let me make sure, is csi.org. Is that correct?
Okay, for the Chimney Safety Institute of America, that's not me. That is an educational foundation. I was president of it for 6 years. But it is C,
Okay.
C as in cat, S as in safety, I as in institute, A as in America, csi.org. That is a certifying agency for chimney sweeps. Okay.
Now, find more about you, what you do.
What we do is in 2010, and I wrote a book about this, but in 2010, I faced major changes in my life and I became a business coach full time servicing blue collar industries. I'm a certified speaker, I'm a certified educator, I'm a certified sales trainer, and I'm certified by John Maxwell and I'm certified by Jeffrey Gitomer as a sales trainer. So what I started doing was working with small businesses across America in the blue collar industries. In fact, I've got a podcast that's called the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. So we started educating, and I started my company. And then when we started it, it was Chimney and Venting Consultants. But it rapidly came that we were coaching, we were educating people. We rebranded as CBC Coaching. My wife is a Ziglar certified coach through through the Ziglar International, Zig Ziglar's organization. In fact, last week we had Tom Ziglar was a guest on my podcast. But what
Right.
we've started doing, we have done educational programs for 30 years. I've been presenting. Now we have now expanded that we're doing online courses. And an online course with us, what we do is we teach online classes, but they are also recorded. So what you can do is you can attend our classes live stream. You can also get the recorded versions that you hold for future training. We'll say you talked about your guys. So you could use some of our training as training them, but you're going to hire other people in the future. So you've got this what we call building the training library. So what we're
Right.
developing at this point is I see that there is a need to educate home inspectors. So what we're doing now is we're rolling out education for a home inspector in how to inspect a chimney. I just touched on the areas this morning. I've certified, trained chimney sweeps for years, chimney inspectors, insurance adjusters, building code officials. But what I see a need in the home inspection industry that you guys have got to understand more about venting, understand more about the appliances, and be able to do this inspection and be able to spot these issues and be able to do it in a matter of minutes and not spending hours sitting there wondering to give you the answers. So that's where it can go to. Once you have the ability and you can spot this, it's amazing what will come so evident to you. I will guarantee you, Preston, that after today's conversation, you will never look at a chimney differently. No, seriously, you will see things on a chimney tomorrow that you have never seen before. I can remember it. I'll even give you a date, 1987. In 1987, all of a sudden, chimneys started having water problems. Prior to 1987, chimneys didn't have water problems. What happened in 1987 that chimneys started having water problems?
I graduated high school, but that probably didn't have anything to do with
No.
it.
What happened?
1987.
87.
Hugo was 89. Chimneys 87.
1987. Do you know prior to 1987, I never saw a water entry issue in a chimney?
Was it some sort of regulation or something that was passed, or
Nope.
deregulation or something?
Nope. I had a gentleman that educated me on water entry and how to spot it, and all of a sudden it was everywhere. Prior to then, I had been slapping roofing chimneys right and left. I didn't know what a cramp. I didn't know anything about flashing, counter flashing, those kind of things. All of a sudden, somebody tells you this. It's kind of like It's kind of like, hey, you go to the mechanic, and he looks at your car, and you just wanted the oil change. That's all you wanted. The car's driving fine, right? And he says, you got a little knock in that engine. And at that point, when you leave there, that knock becomes more evident, more evident, more evident. It's like, this thing's driving me crazy. It's been knocking for years. You just never noticed it. So that's what's going to happen after you look at this. So, the thing is, follow me on Facebook, email me. It's jerry@cvccoaching.com. If you've got a question, guess what? I'll be glad to give you an answer if I can. But if we can help you train you, your people, whatever, and Preston, I'll go even further. If, I live here in Concord. If you've got an association there in Charlotte or whatever still that you're involved in, I'll be glad to do a 1 or 2 hour presentation for them free of charge. Okay? Because that's how we build what we do. But what we want to do is we want to share how home inspectors can be more effective at inspecting chimneys, how they can be more effective in getting the message across, how they use the right language to get it across to the customer, not the language that will upset them. See, that's the problem. Often, when we're communicating with the customer, we're not communicating with the customer in the way the customer wants to be communicated with. So what we've got to do is listen to what we're saying. Listen to how we're phrasing it. Listen and watching ourselves. This is all part of the development that someone goes through. It's like, say, you and I are seeing each other on cams. If you're looking, you're sitting down. I'm walking around the room, right? You can't even see me half the time. I got a 20-foot cord connected to me and a lavalier mic. But if you,
I'm getting one of
right. But if you look at me, you see in my hand motions, I'm doing different things. That's going to increase the believability. And that's what you have to become. This is bad to say. You got to be a tradesperson, but you got to be a salesperson. And everybody in life is always a salesperson. and you never know who you're going to meet that's going to take you to that level. What's going to separate you out? Yeah, your pants, that's a marketing branding idea. I love it. Okay. Stands out. And when I saw the picture of you and Tim with his coat, like there's your twin brother, Tim. Okay. Tim and I don't know if you know or not, Tim and I actually did a book project together. We wrote a book called Daily Differences in Life Lessons. So
Oh,
Tim is, so you guys, when we say Tim is a coach that works for Movement Mortgage and travels around the U.S. and they're based in Charlotte, but Tim's in Nashville, Tennessee. So I got to know
okay.
Tim because he's a John Maxwell coach. So we network a lot. Okay.
Oh, cool. Cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. I saw his presentation. You know, for years, because I've been doing this, and people kept telling me, you got to meet this guy, Tim. And then people were telling Tim they got to meet me. So we finally met each other, and it was cool, man. I like him, man. I've been listening to his podcast, and awesome. And I'm going to start listening to your podcast. So to all the listeners out there, I want to say a big thank you to Jerry for taking his time. This guy's got the goods. I mean, he's obviously the most knowledgeable chimney person on the face of the earth as far as I'm concerned. But he's also a coach and a business coach, and he's got some stuff that can help us because most of us as home inspectors are technicians, and we're good technicians. But that transition from being a technician to being a business person and a salesperson sometimes doesn't come easy because, you know, nobody ever really taught us this. And I think Jerry can help you there and fill in some gaps because he's done it. And if you listen to his podcast, this guy, man, he's got Larry Wingate, Tom Ziegler. I mean, he's got some high-level people on there, and he knows some high-level people. And that is really quite an honor that he would volunteer to come to a local association or something because he's really a big fish, and I appreciate him taking the time. And so in closing there, Jerry, what's all the ways they can get in touch or follow up with you?
Okay. You can follow me on Facebook. My Facebook page is CVC Coaching. You can follow me. We have a YouTube channel, CVC Coaching. There's probably open videos. There's probably about 200 open videos. In fact, this will be on there. Um, and I'm going to actually, Preston, I'm going to return it one day when we get you set up on my podcast. I want you to tell chimney sweeps what the issues that home inspectors have. Okay, is that fair?
Okay.
I want you.
Yeah.
I want you to tell them what is the home inspector looking for. And actually, there's a chimney sweep down the eastern part of North Carolina. His name's Bob Precinct. He's actually he was actually in before home inspectors were licensed. His license number is real low. I remember when you
Okay.
guys were getting licensed. But you can follow me on my social channels. If you want my books, go to Amazon and just just search my name. It's Jerry, Jerry. Last name is Isenhour, Isenhour. In fact, my latest book that I just turned out is called Standardizing Standard Operating Procedures. And here's a special gift for anyone on here. It's not going to cost you a dime. If you will send me an email and say, hey, send me a free copy of that book, I will send you an electronic copy and I will send you a 1 hour webinar free of charge. And it's
Wow.
all the set because this is it. I was a student of the E-Myth, and I'm also a student of the EOS system. But in my belief I'm trying to see if I got a copy because I don't. So anyway, so I started working in systems and systematizing businesses in the 1990s. I was a student of Michael Gerber's. So what I've developed is an 8-step standardization process. And you talked about your guys, Preston, and coming in. Well, this is the problem. Everybody wants to do it their little way, right? Everybody's got this one. So what you've got to do is develop your systems to guide your business. So this 8-step process tells you not only how to write them, it also tells you how to communicate them in a way that people will follow them. So whether you got employees or whatever, we're all systematized in life. When you get out of bed this morning, I will guarantee you do the exact same thing. I will bet you that if you go to an office, you drive the same road and you pass the same people every day. You are systematized. So what this teaches you is the ways to systematize your business. If you ever watch a McDonald's restaurant, look at the research that went into building the McDonald's Speedy system. If you ever get a chance, watch The Founder. That's the movie about Ray Kroc. And when you
Yeah.
look at this, what the McDonald brothers did is they actually drew a McDonald's restaurant on a tennis court. And what they did, they put these people into there and I'm all moving around because the goal of McDonald's was to deliver a hamburger to the customer in 30 seconds or less. That was what it was all about. They only did certain things. So what they did, they analyzed everything they had to do. Now, they were great system people, but the problem was they couldn't build a business. And that's where Ray Kroc came into play.
Yeah.
Ray Kroc sold them some milkshake machines and went out there and seen this. And Ray Kroc, now the bad side about it, Ray Kroc stole their company one day. Okay, he hooked and crooked them right out of McDonald's. And this is a lesson also because Ray Kroc took the company. The McDonald brothers lost the use of their own name. They had to change the name of their restaurant and couldn't use the Golden Arches. Ray hoodwinked them. Okay, but what
Yeah.
held them back was this lid. If you ever read the 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, you'll see that's one of the stories in there is the law of the lid. So, guys, if I can help you, my name's Jerry Isenhour. Email me, connect up with me on Facebook. I'm on the Home Inspectors Exchange group. And Press, there's other groups that would help. Let me know. I love to participate, not from the aspect of building my business. I love to help people. I love to see. Here's my whole thing, Preston. 10 years from now, if I pass you in the street, my hope is that you'll tell me, Jerry, you changed my business, you changed my life. Those are the things that I live to do in this world.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. One more time before you leave, for that free, which is very generous of you, the free book and the free webinar. How did they email you? How did they get that again?
All you got to do is email me, Jerry at cvccoaching.com. Email me and say, hey, send me a copy of that book. You'll get a free link. It'll be an ebook. It'll be really neat. Just mash little buttons, the pages turn and all this. And you'll get a 1 hour webinar. And the 1 hour webinar, I'll tell you about how to build the systems in your company. And once you do that, and I'll tell you, there's two books that every business owner needs to read. One is The E-Myth Revisited, and that is by Michael Gerber. And the other one is Traction, which is by Gino Wickman. Those are two of the bases I coach by. And that's two books. Always remember this, guys. To run a business, you got to be a leader. You got to be a leader. You got to work on your leadership skills. And number two, leaders are readers. Leaders aren't listeners. Leaders are readers. Okay. So, like I said, that's why I got 5 books coming out this year, and one of them is how to market. I got a marketing book coming out with 2 marketing guys. It's how to market a blue collar business, and that's what you're in. And the other one is how to start a business from the ground up and build a phenomenal business, and that is with a human relations expert and a financial person. So that will be out. It's at the publishers. That'll be on Amazon in about 2 weeks. And the marketing, we're hoping to get it out this year. So that'll be 5 books this year, Preston.
Awesome. Well, Jerry, I sure do appreciate you taking it. This is Sunday morning that we're doing this, but I don't know when you guys are listening to it, but I appreciate you sharing your time. And I think everybody who listens to this will, it'll be well worth their time and then some. We will catch up, Jerry. Thank you so much.
Okay, man, and I appreciate it a lot. Are we done?
I think so. Thank you.
Dude.